I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by the General Secretary of the GMB Union, Gary Smith, who's going to make a few words, and then he will have some questions after his presentation. So please keep tweeting those in, and of course we can take them from the floor as well. Gary.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Gary Smith. I'm the General Secretary of the GMB Trade Union, and I am really delighted to be with you this afternoon. On a personal level, energy is something that's very close to my heart. I started work on my 16th birthday as an apprentice with Scottish Gas, and hence my trade union involvement as well. And I should say, in terms of GMB, we are a general union, half our members in the public sector, half in the private sector, health, social care, retail, distribution. Important to this conversation, a big union in manufacturing, very sizable membership across the manufacturing sector, but also we like to see ourselves as the UK's energy union. And we do represent the interests of tens of thousands of workers whose livelihoods and whose very communities are either directly or indirectly supported by the UK energy sector. Our roots as a union are in energy. This union was born, literally blew into life in the London gasworks in the 19th century. And I don't say that in terms of just looking backwards, but actually history can inform where we're at. And when I look at our history, it's a bit like today, that we're going through a huge time of change. And at that period when we were born, mechanisation and changes in the industry were challenging labour practices and actually the value of labour. And I always make the point that our founder, Will Thorne, who was himself a gas worker, recognised the exploitation of the workers at that time, but he also understood the changing nature of the industry in which he worked and the backdrop in which he was operating in a fast-changing world. And Thorne responds, as any good trade unionist would, by organising his colleagues to secure a better deal, but also to help shape the changes that were impacting the industry at that time. And I make the point, it's very important to me when we talk about energy, that we think about the people within energy. In war and in peace across decades now, through scientific revolutions and whole periods of upheaval and change, it's our members who have played a key role in keeping industry powered and keeping the lights on and keeping us warm and safe. And actually, in terms of safety, I know this has been raised around hydrogen, but in terms of safety, we have played a key role in the standards of health and safety we now enjoy in the energy sector. And in areas like the nuclear industry, it was our union that was instrumental in cleaning that sector up so that we have the clean and safe industry of today. And when we move from coal gas, hydrogen, to natural gas, the gas that we, as you know, we use now, we implemented this fantastic national plan, visiting nearly every house when you think about it in the UK, changing every gas injector and every gas burner. I mean, it was an extraordinary feat done in, 15 years. Our union was integral to the agreements that made that whole process happen. And there is a word of caution. I don't use the word just transition, but if we ever had a transition in terms of energy, that was the one. You know, we moved from coal gas to something that was cheaper and cleaner. It created tens of thousands of jobs as we went through the period of conversion, but we lost 40,000 jobs at the end of that process in the gas industry. So none of this is cheap and none of this is painless. And a big part of what we have done over the years and what we continue to do is to work with employers on skills, because we need to make sure that our people are equipped for an ever-changing world of work. And as their industries evolve, we need to make sure our people are able to continue to work in those industries. And so, in essence, the UK's energy story is interwoven into the fabric of the story of the GMB. It's in our DNA. Energy is part and parcel of what we are. And with that, energy is not just an industrial issue for us, it's an emotional one. Because for us, it's about jobs. It's about good union jobs. And it's about the ability to recognise and organise around change. Energy matters to us. And that's why the debate on our energy and industrial future as we move to decarbonise and confront the existential threat of climate change is core business for us in GMB. If our country is to have a secure supply of energy, it needs a proper strategy. And what we have long argued for is a real-world plan that recognises the changing and precarious world in which we live and the interdependent nature of our established and emerging domestic energy industries. And for us, the development of the hydrogen economy has to be very much part of that story. What we're absolutely clear about is that the world in which we live has changed. The events of the past 18 months in particular have shown us that when it comes to the UK's energy future, business as usual is simply not a credible option for UK PLC. Putin's brutal war in Ukraine has compounded the inflationary pressures facing households and businesses across the UK and accelerated the shift in geopolitics of energy and of jobs in energy and all its associated supply chains. The rest of the world is now moving at pace in a race for jobs and investment. But for us, it seems that the UK is stuck in the starting blocks. We know the US and EU are offering unprecedented subsidies and support to win investment and secure jobs of the future. They're confronting China's green manufacturing dominance, and particularly in the case of the US, providing the stimulus to confront inflationary pressures and create good union jobs. And I use that term very deliberately, good union jobs. But that's not my words. Those are the words of President Biden. The message for us is very stark. If you are ignoring or resisting change, you're going to get left behind. And it's against this backdrop of change that I fear, and our union fears, for the UK's future, for our shared prosperity, for our environmental obligations, and for our national security. At times, it seems to me that political leaders do not understand the reality of the UK's existing energy infrastructure and mix, or the dependencies of households and industries on this, and the scale of government support that must be provided for the UK to credibly compete in this global race for jobs and investment as we all work to net zero. These fears are heightened when I hear government ministers attack what they call US protectionism, or when I hear talk of bans for new oil and gas exploration and production in the North Sea. I see, including when I come to events like this, lots of initiatives. I see lots of policy documents being produced by government. I see a lot of positive intent. I actually see green shoots of the potential future we can build. But I don't see, and neither do I feel, the political urgency that is required. Fundamentally, I think there has been a failure to understand the changing world around us or the reality of our current situation. It reinforces my belief that just as the response to net zero cannot simply be left to the market, energy and industrial policy cannot be left solely to the state. I believe the scale of the challenge requires a wartime type response. We need vision, we need certainty, we need honesty that's been lacking in so much of the debate about energy, and we need courage. I remain hopeful that we can do this because I know that we've done it before, and we've done it before based on collaboration. Government, employers and workers. Listening, learning, developing and delivering. If we work together, I firmly believe we can get UK PLC into the global race, and we can win the industries and jobs that will secure the nation's future. A case in point is the UK's hydrogen economy. And I said earlier, we can see some green shoots there. We see the growth of hydrogen fuel cells in buses. I'm sure you've talked about that. It's replacing diesel buses in many of our towns and cities. That's to be welcomed. JCB, we organised JCB with thousands of members, fantastic and highly successful manufacturing and business. And we know from JCB how important hydrogen is for the future of that business, because big machines are not going to be run by batteries. We see what's happening with the prototype hydrogen villages being created in the Wirral and Humberside and the Scottish borders. And the nascent sector, as we see it, and its employers, are already supporting good jobs and, yes, union jobs. What we see is a transition in its infancy, actually in action and delivering. But for us, it's only scratching the surface, because the word potential remains a millstone around the neck of the sector, as it does around the wider economy and its supply chains. And all this is happening while the rest of the world presses ahead on all aspects of hydrogen development and production. The prize is massive. A vibrant economy is achievable. But our point as a union is that we don't have the luxury of picking between choosing what type of hydrogen we want. Some see hydrogen through the prism of green, but for us, the truth is, until the UK has the grid capacity and infrastructure to turn that vision into reality, then it will remain in the box marked potential. Hydrogen has a vital role to play, not only in decarbonising transport, but also as a viable low-carbon alternative for heating the UK's housing stock, which is currently, as many of you will know, 4/5 dependent on gas. And I'll say this to any politician who say the future's not about gas heating or boilers and walls and housing and we're going to go to all electric. Put it in your manifesto. Tell people honestly what that future looks like and what it's going to cost them. And of course they won't do it. And the truth is, we need to see the oil and gas sector, the skills of its workforce, as vital to the development of carbon capture and storage, and with it hydrogen production, as we move in this process of decarbonising homes and industry. A failure to do so, failure to recognise that central role of oil and gas, does for us mean abandoning the prospect of a meaningful jobs and skills transition, and with it, the UK's commitment to Paris and our 2050 net zero targets. And the extent of this interdependency was crystallised to me earlier this week when I was in Aberdeen to discuss energy policy with the offshore industries. They reinforced the arguments that our union has made consistently about the dangers of cliff edge policies concerning the future of the North Sea oil and gas. The dangers for investment, for jobs, skills, and security of supply. Because the honest truth is, we are going to need oil and gas for many, many decades to come. And it was sobering this week to hear testimony from industry, from company directors and CEOs, with interests across the energy sector, about how oil and gas is the foundation for their journey into clean energy, including hydrogen. The message they gave me was loud and clear. A ban on new licences will not only accelerate capital flight, which is already happening, we can see that. We see job losses announced in Aberdeen and companies getting out of Aberdeen at the end of last week. It won't only exacerbate that process, it will impact their ability to invest in their own transitions, to keep jobs and skills and clean technology production here in the UK. Now, I do appreciate that some may find this argument about oil and gas counterintuitive, but it is just a reality of where we are in the UK with our energy mix and the industrial realities that we confront. And it does pose a really hard question which is, why would you want to cut the legs away from employers and industries who want to be part of the net zero solution and who are willing to invest in doing so and are actually already starting to deliver it? GMB has strongly argued, and we will continue to argue, that what we need are plans and not bans in building our energy future. Now, the failure for us to plan so far has meant that workers have paid the price as we've exported jobs to countries like China and imported virtue. We have seen firsthand what the failure on the much promised green jobs looks like. We see it through the lived experience of our members in communities like Fife and Humberside and in South Wales. Workers paid off 10 weeks ago in Fife, doing the crumbs that they got from a wind farm contract. They can see this wind farm 10 miles off the coast, and all that work, all the fabrication and manufacturing work is done in Indonesia. 180 workers laid off 10 weeks ago. That's the reality. Because the truth is, like the story of Fife, instead of manufacturing infrastructure and material needed for the UK's low carbon future here, the last decade has seen it almost all offshored to the rest of the world. The UK is littered with blueprints for how not to deliver a green jobs transition. I recently visited America, spoke to American unions and members of the Biden administration, and they described to me the UK as a cautionary tale when it comes to an energy transition. And our country and our people deserve better. And that's why our union is committed to campaigning and organising for the growth of good union jobs across our nations and regions. And in the very best traditions of our union, we understand central to that is the need for us to address the challenges we've got around energy. But the energy that we're going to need in the future isn't guaranteed. The UK must increase its energy independence and secure supply if we're going to face down threats from authoritarian regimes and find a workable way to net zero. It means the UK needs a mix of domestic energy sources, renewables, hydrogen. We're going to need lots more nuclear and oil and gas. It means increasing grid capacity, building up manufacturing supply chains in the way that Biden is doing, repurposing the gas infrastructure and retrofitting homes and businesses. And it means confronting the UK skills crisis so we have a workforce that's ready to compete and win and build a different future. It is a fact that we have pressing skill shortages across the energy sector. And on the current trajectory, I'm very clear that we could not build the other 4 or perhaps 5 big nuclear power stations that we're going to need, much less repurpose our energy infrastructure as we move to a hydrogen economy. And it would be, and I will keep saying this, be a huge mistake to impose a cliff edge on the industries that are sustaining jobs and skills today and industries that can unlock the transition tomorrow. It would be a huge mistake to sacrifice the national interest in a time of global change by not taking responsibility for our climate and industrial obligations. As a union, we recognise the changes that are happening around us. It's what we've been doing for over 130 years. We recognise the reality of the UK's energy needs and the opportunities and threats in front of us. We recognise the need for a collaborative effort to maximise those opportunities and mitigate these threats. That's how we can create greater stability in uncertain times, and that's how we can build confidence to invest even in tough times. And that's how we deliver a better future for my members, a better future for your industries, and a better future for our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Gary. That speech you've just given puts you in direct conflict with the Labour Party and the SNP Scottish Government, doesn't it?
Well, I think we bumped into the Labour Party recently, ill thought through, a bit naive from them. I think they've got it wrong, and I hope they're trying to get themselves off a hook. The policy of the SNP, and I was back in Scotland. I actually spent most of my life down south, most of my working life. I spent 5 or 6 years back in Scotland as Scottish Secretary of the Union, and the hypocrisy, I have to say, for the SNP and Scottish Government around energy is something staggering. And now they've done a huge volte fast because now apparently they're pro-oil and gas. The Greens, of course, have been quiet on this. But what has seared into me in my time in Scotland is year after year being told about the Saudi Arabia of renewables, which is just around the corner. Year after year, the Scottish Government talking about just transitions. They've got a Just Transition Commission that's been running for years. I've made the point the Just Transition Commission's consumed more buffies at bloody lunchtime than it has created jobs. Because the jobs in the Scottish energy transition are all being done halfway around the world. In fact, we've often joked about the Saudi Arabia of renewables is in the Middle East because our infrastructure has been built in sovereign oil and gas fund-backed yards. So our job is, we are a critical friend of the Labour Party. We should say about the Tory government, been a disaster on energy for balance's sake. But we are never going to slavishly follow any party line. My job is to tell the truth about our members' jobs, about communities, and about the real-world experience of people.
And as it relates to the energy transition, obviously with reference to Scotland's oil gas, but more broadly in the UK, how do you see that developing, particularly for hydrogen and hydrogen production?
Well, two things. First of all, this thing about oil and gas is a Scottish thing. It's not. Half the jobs in oil and gas are in Scotland, half are in England and Wales. And then we've got huge amounts of people in the petrochemical sector and across energy-intensive manufacturing industries which are dependent on oil and gas. Our members will rotate from building ships to working offshore, to working at Hinkley Point on the new nuclear power station, to doing some work in petrochemicals. So we need to be clear about how that economy works. In terms of hydrogen, I think, so we've heard the debate about protectionism with America. We're not pro-protectionist policies, they don't work. If the UK has any strategic advantage, it is probably around hydrogen and carbon capture and storage. And my worry is we're going to surrender that advantage in the way that we did with nuclear and indeed the way that we did with wind. So we've got to seize the moment. We've got depleted oil and gas fields to store the carbon. We've got loads of sea, we've got a bit of wind. We're paying to turn wind farms off at the moment when we could be capturing that energy. So I think we have a chance with hydrogen to create jobs, to create export potential, to give people opportunities in the way that the oil and gas industry has, and to reverse the flow of gas from east to west, from west to east. So it's a unique opportunity for this country, and it's one that we have to seize.
And as someone who started life in the gas industry, what role do you see for clean hydrogen now?
Well, I don't think we can pick between, I'm not sure, we can pick between either green or blue hydrogen, and there's all bits in between. I think,
but it's within the context of net zero, of course.
Yeah, very quickly we need to get on with hydrogen. We need it for our manufacturing industries. JCB are crying out. They've got the technology they've got. It's fantastic. I was up at the plant with Rachel Reeves recently. We need to get on with it. We need to give people certainty. We need to start blending hydrogen into the gas supply, and I think we can do that quite quickly. But we need to give people confidence that we've got a direction to travel. Less ideology and more understanding about what we actually need, and let's get on with developing a plan that's got some sort of consensus around it.
And where currently are your members working within the hydrogen industry?
Anywhere there's a pipe, we've got members involved in it. So, and our members wouldn't discriminate about what sort of pipes they're fitting or what's going down the pipes. Any of the clusters that we've got, the Tees and the Humber, our members work in engineering and construction. Our members will be working on that piping and infrastructure. They'll be working further down the supply chains. So across this sector, we've got members. It's intrinsically linked to the wider energy debate, and that's where our people, that's where our tens of thousands of our people are.
And where do you see the opportunities for those good jobs you want going ahead?
Well, first of all, we need to be honest that we haven't realised those good jobs. And working class communities are sick listening to nonsense about all these green jobs that are now going to arrive. Wherever you live on the coast, on the east coast of this country, you'll see a wind farm, and your community will have had no input or very little input into manufacturing or fabricating that wind farm. It's not true to say that the only jobs we've created are sweeping up dead birds, but it's not far off it. And actually, I often say to people, you want a job in renewables, get a job in the City of London. No disrespect to people here, the jobs are in finance and public relations and lawyers. That's the truth of the renewables industry at the moment. Hydrogen gives us an opportunity to develop manufacturing supply chains. It gives us a chance to secure what we've already got. And I just sense this massive export potential that we've got. The country is uniquely placed to develop the hydrogen technologies of the future. Let's not surrender it. We once led on wind. We once led in nuclear. We gave that up. Let's not miss that.
So what does it need to make that happen?
I mean, look, investment and money is going to be important, but I think clarity from politicians and a national plan that we sign up to and agree to. Part the ideology, let's face the realities and say in the same way, look, we converted the country from coal gas to natural gas. We did that through a national plan, and that's what we're going to require with hydrogen. And we it will gradually happen. This is not going to happen overnight. And the great thing about hydrogen is we have the chance to develop this economy. It's not a stop-go. It's something we can evolve through. There's a lot of companies who want to go further with the investment. We've got the skills. We've got people who are desperate to do these jobs. We just need to get on with it now.
And in that area of skills and training, what would you like to see?
Well, the truth is, at the moment, as we see it, there is a lot of money that's gone unspent from apprentice levy money and other training money around training. We are going to move the whole workforce literally from Hinkley Point to Sizewell. But the truth is, people have been in that project for 8 years, they will retire. We should be using monies that are unspent at the moment and leveraging industry money, more industry money, to start training for the market now. Why are we not training kids in Sunderland and some of these communities that were deindustrialised to do these jobs that we know are coming around the track? And if we have a plan, if we put a drumbeat of work in place, we can get people into work now. But let me also say there is a real worry. You cannot turn off industries and turn them back on again. If we shut down oil and gas and switch it off, it ain't coming back, and we're going to lose those skills. Barrow and furnace, there are two things really there that people do. There's Spirit Energy and there's a submarine yard. When Cameron and Osborne stopped building submarines in their austerity period, the Navy got the fright of their life when it turned out we couldn't build submarines anymore because we'd lost those skills. And it will be even more profound in the energy sector if we're not careful.
So finally, do you accept that the IRA is a protectionist policy, and do we need something like that here?
We're not a reserve currency. We've not got the economy the size of America. We are a trading nation. We're going to have to continue to trade. But there is an opportunity for us to do something about onshoring our supply chains. The geopolitics have changed post-Ukraine. China has changed. I'm worried politicians are still harking back to an era of openness in China. The world has moved on. There is an imperative in terms of jobs and skills, but there's also an imperative in terms of national security. So I think there is a wonderful opportunity not to copy exactly what Biden's doing, but to learn the lessons from it. And if we don't, the Europeans are going to do something, the Americans are doing something, where are we left?
And I get the sense you don't think the Green Prosperity Plan is that answer.
From Labour? No, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in this. I think Rachel Reeves has been very bold, very imaginative. I have to say she's stolen some of our lines, and we like Rachel a lot. I think she's a member. But I hear Rachel, when she's in America, talking about jobs transition and ditching all this rubbish about just transition. If Labour's going to win votes, it's going to be based on jobs and opportunity and hope for communities that have been deprived for so long. And let's not forget, when we deindustrialised large swathes of our country under Thatcherism, we had offshore oil and gas. It absorbed a lot of the economic impact. People went to work offshore. That's why when you go offshore, they're all jocks and Geordies and people from the north of England. In fact, you meet them all over the world in the oil and gas sector. my challenge to every politician has been, where's your Aberdeen for renewables? Where's your Aberdeen in the future? But no, I'm very positive about Rachel's stuff, and our job is to work constructively with them to bring this to life now.
Gary Smith, General Secretary of GMB, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.